Hey, I'm Mac. Welcome back to my channel. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe and consider joining my Patreon for access to new videos 12 to 24 hours early. So, we are still coming along on the video on the sugar industry. And today what we're going to talk about is the MLM Unicity. And this was tipped off by these screenshots that were sent in on my Google form, link in the description. So Unicity sells the typical lineup of bullshit supplement, health ultra processed food type of thing. And I was quite surprised at the relative audacity of these claims being made here. So we have someone here saying that the Unicity products can reverse diabetes, lower cholesterol, fix high blood pressure, fix your triglycerides, fix polycystic ovarian syndrome, and so much more. Weight loss is a side effect. No questions asked. I don't know if they're saying no questions asked about. $5 a day to eat what you want and still get results. This is a food-based product, so it's not food. For if you can eat food you see. Maybe don't call your customers a C. And Mike says, wow, that's a lot of health claims and studies to back it up. Okay. There's a reason that products like supplements always have to say this product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent any disease. And that is because when you claim to treat a disease, that makes your product to be considered a drug by the FDA. If you're claiming that you can do such and such to a disease, then you are making a drug claim, and you need to submit what's called a new drug application to the FDA and go through the pharmaceutical approval process. So saying that you can fix high blood pressure and that you can fix PCOS and reverse diabetes not only is claiming to reverse diabetes, considering that diabetes in terms of lost productivity and medical costs, it costs the US about $350 billion a year. I'm pretty sure if you had a product that could reverse diabetes, I don't think you would be selling it on Facebook in an MLM. Okay, because there's almost $500 billion per year at stake there. You know, there's kind of a lot of impetus to get rid of diabetes. Wow. And I assume we're talking about type 2 diabetes because, you know, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. So I don't know if you're planning on making the beta cells in the pancreas grow back, but that doesn't happen, okay? Jesus. It's unbelievable. It's like, do you really think that if you had the ability to cure diabetes, that you would be selling it on Facebook in an MLM? Really? You think you've got it all figured out? Okay. It's $42 for 7 days worth of it. 84 for 14. Yeah, I can, we can do math. Okay. Sometimes I know you guys can't. So we got a response here to another comment. You have to understand that you get WH capital T, you pay for GG, it's worth the price, and it's natural help. Just a 1 meth supply is worth it. Okay. Let me just reference the song that Strong Bad sings on homestarrunner.com. If it's possessive, then it's just ITS. But if it's a contraction, then it's IT apostrophe S. You get what you pay for, really. That's usually not the case in an MLM. And Mike says, MLM products be unreasonably overpriced, though. And someone agreed. Well, I don't know. I don't know why you give a thumbs up like that. Oh, okay. Because it's not an MLM, okay? It works, and science behind it. My husband has successfully reversed his diabetes with no meds or insulin. Only feel great. And Mike's like, says right here, it's an MLM. Really? Your husband has successfully reversed his diabetes. Well, that's incredible. That's incredible. Also, the meds and insulin, they don't reverse diabetes. Okay? Lifestyle changes can potentially reverse diabetes, type 2 diabetes. But we don't have a medication that cures diabetes, and insulin does not cure diabetes either. Just so we're crystal clear here. And then, so I guess this is the proof here. We have a glucometer reading of 234 milligrams per deciliter, and then we have another one of 98. Okay, I don't know how much everyone knows about taking a blood sugar level, but you could get both of those to appear by like drinking a soda with sugar in it, like right before you did the test. And then if you just wait it looks like they waited. Oh my God, this is so stupid. Anyway, first, I'm just going to finish my point here. If you just waited like 30 minutes to an hour after drinking that soda, you would also get you could get 234 and 98. Blood sugar changes really quickly. So this doesn't tell you anything, because blood sugar changes hour by hour, minute to minute. It changes very rapidly after you eat, and it changes if you haven't eaten for a while, it goes back down. This tells you literally nothing. This doesn't tell you anything, this reading here. This would be like if I said that I could charge my car by eating a sandwich and then grabbing the steering wheel, and I showed you a picture of my car's battery at 0 and then a picture of my car's battery at 100%, and I'm like 2 months apart, and I'm just like, look, see, it works. How else would it get from 0 to 100%? Oh, well, maybe that's because it's something that changes minute to minute. Okay, I'm surprised they had to wait almost 2 months to get these two readings. Okay. Big yikes. When you're talking about blood sugar, what you would want to see here is, it could be fasting. That's when it's supposed to be, but I highly doubt that this is. I highly doubt that's what's going on here. And even if it is, we don't know what they did to get that lower reading. We have no idea. They could have been exercising before the second reading, and that was why they got it. Who knows? We don't know. Furthermore, usually with diabetes, to check in on the status of it, you're going to look at what's called the A1C, because the A1C is a number that it's a lab value that reflects kind of the average blood sugar levels over the past, several months. And that's how you would track how it's doing. Still just seeing two A1C readings wouldn't tell me anything, because I don't know what else you've been doing. That's why we don't use anecdotes to do drug approvals. We use randomized controlled trials so that as best as you can ensure it, that the other factors that could be confounding are controlled for. That's why it's called a randomized controlled trial. This doesn't tell you anything at all, even if this is literally meaningless. But then we have the explanation, which is, this is 2 methods of reversing diabetes on FGS. If this isn't proof how well this product is for you, I don't know what else is. Save that dollars you spend daily on unnecessarily things and make a life decision you won't regret. And it's easy 2 steps while you still eat what you want. Oh, and it's 2 easy steps while you still eat what you want. No diets, no calorie counting, no side effects or gimmicks. Best part of this is that it's a money back guaranteed. What do you have to lose? Okay, well, it's FBS, not FGS. It's fasting blood sugar. Or you could also have FBG, fasting blood glucose. It's not fasting glucose sugar. So that's the first thing. Maybe know what the reading that you're citing is called. And run spell check. It's like it looks, how can I trust that you've done any sort of like testing on this when you can't even run spell check on this? Like, why would I find that trustworthy? I'm not trying to judge people for having different manners of speaking. I'm saying that you could run a grammar check on this and it would take you like 2 seconds. This makes me think that you don't pay attention to details or accuracy. Like, this just seems really careless and it's not convincing at all, because I cannot express how meaningless these 2 readings are. Utterly meaningless. They don't tell you shit. So, based on how horrifying that was, I would like to know what sorts of things they are hearing from on high over at Unicity. So I thought we would take a look at a little presentation being put on by one of their scientists who's a PhD and happens to also be an associate professor at Brigham Young University. And he's going to tell us about how our bodies use fuel at this Unicity presentation. And we'll just see what he has to say so that we can see if we can determine where the hell this came from.
I am delighted to be here. It is my great privilege, and I'm always so thrilled when Unicity wants scientists to come speak. And that really is reflective of how much Unicity cares about what you know about health.
Based on this, it seems like they don't care very much.
Well, as I've spoken about before, every time you've ever heard me speak, I always speak about the body and metabolism and metabolic health, because that's my forte. As a scientist, that's what I study. Every day, I think about how the body can be healthier with metabolic function. And so today I'm going to talk about how the body uses energy. And within all of our bodies, there are countless, millions of chemical reactions happening all the time. The sum, or the combination of all of these reactions is what we call metabolism. And of course, if these reactions are more active, then your metabolic rate is higher. If there are fewer reactions, then the metabolic rate is lower. But suffice it to say, whatever's happening in the body needs energy to get this stuff done, whatever the body needs to do. In order to get that energy, we eat. And we have three main parts of our diet. These main parts are called the three macronutrients.
I hope he's not going too fast for you guys. So we eat to get energy.
And feel free to take notes in case I give you a test at the end. So these
You're so funny.
three macronutrients, you've seen them before. Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. These are the main parts of our diet. Now, to be fair, only two of these are really used as fuel: carbohydrate and fat. Protein, on the other hand, is really more of a building block. We're made of protein. It's what's giving our body the structure that it needs to work, to move. So, I don't want to talk more about protein at the moment. We're going to talk more about that this afternoon. And because
I'm hoping the reason he doesn't want to talk about it is because he's going to talk about gluconeogenesis later, which is when your body will make glucose out of protein. Like, at the end of the day, your body is going to want to get the glucose that it can get. And if it has to do that by converting protein into sugar, then it will. So that's not really accurate what he said about only carbs and fat being used as fuel, because protein can be converted into carbs.
I only want to talk about fuel for the body. Let's put protein to the side for now and focus on carbohydrate and fat, the two sources of energy that our body uses all the time. Whether we use fat or carbohydrate for fuel in our bodies depends on the hormone insulin. And insulin is a small little hormone that flows through our blood, and it determines what energy the body is using. And so, how does the food we eat affect insulin? If insulin determines what kind of energy we use, well, we want to know what happens to insulin levels when we eat. When someone eats pure carbohydrate, this could be something like bread or cereal or rice, we have a substantial increase in insulin, where insulin can climb 10 times higher than normal, and it can stay elevated for up to 4 hours. In contrast, if someone eats fat in their diet, fat alone has a negligible effect on insulin. If insulin is low and the person were to eat a source of pure fat, the insulin won't even change. It just keeps moving along. Now, we have the two fuels, fat and carbohydrate. When insulin is elevated, the body makes a decision. And at this point, it shifts and it starts to use most of its, or get more of its energy from carbohydrate. So basically, the body goes into sugar burning mode.
I don't really like the way that he's characterizing this, because it's not really that insulin programs burning sugar. I mean, that is a downstream effect, but insulin, in addition to many other functions, allows glucose to be taken out of the bloodstream and into the cells where it will be burned. But I don't like the way that he's characterizing this, because it's important to be precise if you're going to be using vague terminology like this, because you don't know how people will kind of run with it if they misunderstand it. And there's enough misinformation out there about just diet and nutrition in general, and you will see what a clusterfuck it is in the video that I do about the sugar industry and the food industry. However, a better way to put it is that insulin is the primary anabolic hormone, as in it builds up body mass. So when you have insulin levels that are up, you're building, you're storing, you're producing more body mass, whether that's like fat tissue, which it usually is, versus catabolism. Catabolism means breaking down body tissue, which is like which sounds kind of bad when you just say it like that, but it's a normal state where it could be breaking down fat to burn for energy if you haven't eaten in a while, or it could be breaking down protein to convert into sugar to use as energy. So you have anabolism and catabolism, and insulin promotes insulin is anabolic. I just feel like that's a better way to put it. I feel that's probably what he's getting at. Most of this is mostly right so far. I just don't really like the way that he's characterizing it.
It starts to burn sugar or blood sugar. In contrast, if insulin levels are low, now the body switches, and then it starts to burn more fat for fuel. It has shifted its energy source. It's kind of like the body is a hybrid Sonata. It has an option. The engine can use two fuels. And so in this case, again,
that was so random. Was this sponsored by Hyundai? What the fuck? My body is not a Hyundai.
if insulin is low, it shifts our metabolic engines to use fat for fuel and less carbohydrate or less blood sugar. Now, within the body, again, to really bring...
That was so stupid. Like, how is it easier for me to think of the fact that the body can run on two fuels? Like, how did bringing in a hybrid car help me think about that? Like, I get that a hybrid car has two energy sources, but I think I can understand that there are two sources of fuel. Like, I don't think you need to make a metaphor for it.
Bring this together. Elevated insulin means carbohydrate burning or sugar burning. And if we're burning more sugar, that means we're burning less fat. And if we aren't burning fat, then the amount of fat that we have on our bodies goes up, because insulin won't let us burn fat for fuel. If it's
Okay, but see, this is why what I said is important, because it's not just that it's not letting you burn it, it's that it is actively promoting creating more of it, because insulin is anabolic. Also, I mean, and so what is this like? Is this like when your hybrid car starts getting bigger, like it becomes like your hybrid car becomes an SUV because it's running on gas? Like, what the fuck?
It's elevated. And so high insulin means a shift to carbohydrate burning and less fat burning. But of course, the solution is quite simple. If we want to
No, it's not.
burn more fat, if we have more fat than we want, if we want to use this fat for fuel that is on our body, if we can lower our insulin levels, well, then we start using fat for fuel. It becomes the main source of energy for the body. And then the fat that we have stored starts to be used. And of course, that means our fat tissue starts to shrink, which is something we all want, right?
No.
We never want to have too much fat. Now, so here's the overall perspective.
So this is like when you like, I hate it when my hybrid car switches and lowers its insulin level, but like I'm carrying stuff in it, you know, like what if I have my skis in there and then it all of a sudden becomes like a two-door car because the insulin levels weren't high enough? Like, that sucks. So what was the point of that metaphor, dude?
Low insulin or high insulin means high carbohydrate use. The body starts to burn sugar. And if insulin is too high for too long, it creates something called insulin resistance. You've heard me speak of this before. I've talked about it at a previous global convention. It's the topic that I focus on the most. The reason I care about insulin resistance, and the reason I want you to care about it, even though you might not care about insulin resistance right now, it's because you don't know it like I do.
Oh my God, just say it.
Insulin resistance can cause almost every chronic disease. If you know someone who has high blood pressure, hypertension, it's probably because they're insulin resistant. If you know someone who has Alzheimer's disease, dementia, when the brain doesn't work as well, it could be that the brain has become insulin resistant. If you know someone who has infertility, the most common form of infertility in women is a disease called polycystic ovarian syndrome. And that's because of insulin resistance.
Okay, that one was accurate. The high blood pressure thing, like, okay, I mean, maybe in this country by statistics, and then the Alzheimer's thing, what the fuck, dude? That is it. What is this based on, sir? Do you have a study for me? How can you say that? Yeah. I know a lot of people who have high blood pressure who are not insulin resistant. So, how can you say probably? Ugh. The PCOS one was correct, though. Like, that is very frequently related to insulin resistance.
The insulin disrupts the normal hormones that allow a woman to be fertile. And there are many other disorders that are all a result, including some cancers that are connected to insulin resistance. So here, insulin resistance is either the cause or making every one of these disorders worse. So if you fear chronic disease, you should be fearing insulin resistance. Now, what happens when someone eats carbohydrate? Of course, insulin climbs. And that means the body starts to burn carbohydrate for fuel.
Oh my God, how many times are you gonna say this?
That makes sense. If you eat the carbohydrate, the body wants to use carbohydrate. And insulin is what tells the body to do that. In contrast, if someone eats fat in their diet, fat alone helps insulin stay low. And so what fuel does the body use? Well, then the body will use fat for fuel. This concept of being able to switch between fuel sources is a situation that we scientists call metabolic flexibility. The metabolic engine in our body is able to switch between these two fuel sources. If it's getting carbohydrate, it burns it. If it's eating fat, it burns the fat.
If there's no carbohydrate.
Now, unfortunately, metabolic flexibility is the goal. We all want to be able to use fat and switch between them, just like a hybrid engine in a car. Unfortunately, what happens more and more today is that a person eats more than a little bit of carbohydrate. They eat.
Okay, I'm gonna bet that he never says which carbohydrate it is, because there's one in particular.
Eat so much refined starch and sugar all the time that it pushes the insulin levels up all the time. And insulin essentially gets stuck in a high position. And if we keep insulin high, it's stuck. We're eating carbohydrate. The moment the person wakes up, and every 2 hours later, they eat more refined starch and more sugar. So insulin.
He still has not said the one. He said the category that it's in, but it's okay. We'll talk about it next video.
Is elevated almost every moment of the day. So insulin gets stuck in a high situation. That means the body gets stuck in sugar burning mode. Because insulin is chronically elevated, we're never letting the body switch to burning fat for fuel. We're stuck as sugar burners, where we don't want to be. And of course, if we're only burning sugar in our blood for fuel, or mostly sugar, that means our body fat is never getting used for fuel. And so what starts to happen? Well, it starts to climb. We aren't able to use this fat for fuel.
Again, if he had just said that insulin is anabolic, this would have taken like 2 minutes to explain. And he still has not. There's one carbohydrate in particular that is basically a toxin, and it is a type of something that he said. But I guarantee you he's not going to say what it is. Because I can just already tell that he's way off in the weeds here, like thinking way too hard about shit.
So this situation, when the body can't switch to burning fat, is metabolic inflexibility. We've lost the ability to switch between sugar burning or carbohydrate burning and fat burning. We need that flexibility to be healthy. And of course, the solution in this case is simply to start to reduce the carbohydrates. So if we take away some of the carbohydrate, we allow the insulin to come down, and that means we can start using body fat for fuel. Now, one thing I've learned as a professor, and I teach 20-year-olds, and so I have to find clever ways to teach my students at my university. One of the ways I teach my students effectively is that I use analogies. So
is that like the hybrid car?
let's look at this lesson in a slightly different way. Let's pretend that our bodies are like this big fuel truck. Doesn't matter which country you're in, you can find some kind of truck like this. It's rumbling down the road, and it's hauling fuel. Now, this truck actually has two fuel sources, or two areas of fuel. Can you see them? One is very big and obvious, and one is not. Now, when this truck is driving down the road, when it starts to run out of fuel, it has to stop and fill up. But of course, it is only getting its fuel from that small little tank underneath the cab of the truck, the main part of the truck. But can you see the problem? It's relying on that small little fuel tank, but it has all of that fuel that it's carrying around. But
I doubt it's carrying diesel fuel.
Truck can never access it. It can't use that fuel, even though it's hauling it around. This is just like our bodies.
No, it's not.
We have a little bit of fuel in our bodies stored as carbohydrate. Not too much, enough to get through about a day. But we have, even in a person who's lean and is not overweight, we have about 100 times more energy in our body stored as fat.
Yeah, because the other types of energy can be converted into energy. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, this is so stupid.
All that stuff that we can jiggle and pinch. We are carrying this fuel around, but we never use it. Just like this truck, he can't use that big tank of fuel. He can only use the fuel that's in that small tank at the front. So what would happen here? We need to put some new connections in this truck so that he could not just use the fuel from the small tank, but start to use the big fuel. And insulin is the key. If insulin is low, that means this truck can stop only ever burning the fuel from the small tank, and it can start using all of the fuel that it's hauling around.
Yeah, well, the customer's probably not going to be very happy when he gets there.
This is just like our bodies.
How?
Lower insulin means we can use the big source of fuel. Now, like I'd said a moment ago, as a professor, I like to show this in different ways. I want to teach you this concept, this lesson, in one different way. And to do this, let's watch a video.
The human body is an amazing and complicated system that requires energy to function. The food we eat provides this energy for us to go about our daily activities. Our food is made up of 3 primary macronutrients: protein, carbohydrate, and fat. Our bodies are designed to use both
They're not designed.
carbohydrate and fat for energy. We call this ability to switch between these macronutrients
Is this just repeating what he went over?
metabolic flexibility. This ability has elegantly served us throughout history, in times of surplus when food was plentiful, and in times of famine when food was scarce. However, today, because of the way we eat, most of us find ourselves perpetually in surplus.
Yeah, because of one particular development.
We've become better at storing energy than using energy.
No, there's a certain nutrient that has become a lot more abundant and a lot more unavoidable.
This reality has changed the way our bodies function, leading to an astronomical increase in poor metabolic health around the world. So, how does this happen, and how do we stop it? After consuming carbohydrates, our bodies convert that food into glucose, a simple sugar that travels through our bloodstream. As glucose enters our bloodstream, the hormone insulin increases and acts as a gatekeeper to our cells, opening the cellular door, allowing glucose to enter and be used either for immediate energy or stored for later use. This combination of glucose and insulin results in quick energy delivery throughout our bodies. If there is extra glucose in our bloodstream, insulin helps our bodies store this excess glucose in our fat cells so we can access it later. When our bodies need energy and don't have any food handy, it tries to turn to these fat cells for energy. As long as insulin levels are higher, the stored energy is locked in fat cells. As insulin comes down, the cells are unlocked, and we can start using our stored fat as energy. Healthy metabolic flexibility is based on our body's ability to use glucose for energy at certain times and using fat for energy at other times. When we have increased levels of insulin more often than not, we prevent switching from glucose burning to fat burning. This is where our natural metabolic flexibility breaks down. Our bodies need constant fuel. After all the glucose in our bloodstream has been distributed and the energy from stored fat is not easily accessible because of the presence of insulin, we begin to feel sluggish, hungry, and start craving more food. So we eat again, and if the food is high in carbohydrates, more insulin is released, restarting the cycle of energy consumption and storage all over again. Our bodies remain constantly saturated in insulin. Insulin takes a toll on our bodies. We age faster and can begin to develop insulin resistance, which can lead to metabolic disorder and weight gain. So, how do we stop this cycle and return to our natural state of burning both carbohydrate and stored fat? Unicity has studied and created products to help us achieve better metabolic health. By following a few simple principles, we can better activate the ability to access the extra fat we carry around and use it for energy.
Okay, nowhere in this has it mentioned that the body is also going to preferentially break down muscle tissue to replace what it's not getting, because it's going to burn fat kind of as a last resort in a way. Because if you're breaking down muscle, then you are not only getting the energy out of those proteins, which you can turn into carbohydrates, you are also extinguishing something that is burning up some of your energy. Because muscle, even when it's not being used, muscle burns up energy. So you're like not only unclogging the drain, you're also turning off the sink. So it kind of left that part out, I guess, because it kind of complicates the story.
And to improve our overall metabolic health. The Unicity principles include prioritize protein, fuel with fat, and control carbohydrates. Protein is critical in building and maintaining healthy muscle and bone, and most people don't get enough.
most people don't get enough protein. So I looked this up to see where they might be getting this from. And I found a study, and I feel like this is the study they're getting it from. It's in the Journal of Nutrition, Health, and Aging. And the study is on adults 51 years of age or older. And it found that they don't get enough protein. Because I was just so surprised to hear this, because it's pretty common knowledge that most people consume way more than enough protein in their diet every day. Yeah. And again, this is leaving out the fact that if there's a bunch of protein floating around, your body is going to convert that into sugar and use it. Like, it's not just going to be like, oh, I guess we have to build muscles and be hungry. No, it's going to use it up. Your liver is going to turn it into glucose if there's excess available. Also, I thought it was interesting that this low dietary protein finding, the study finding that it was low in adults over 51 years of age. Yeah, that was funded by Abbott Laboratories, who manufactures Ensure, which is a ready-to-drink protein shake commonly used to supplement protein intake in the elderly. So I thought that was interesting. It was also funded by Bariatrics Nutrition, which is a manufacturer of items like fitness marketed ultra processed foods like protein bars and shit, and also dietary supplements. And they do that for other brands to private label, such as multi-level marketing companies, perhaps. I don't have proof that Bariatrics Nutrition manufactures something for Unicity to private label, but I did find that very interesting.
Hunger and cravings sabotage the most well-intentioned health plans. Fat also has no insulin response and digests more slowly than carbohydrate, helping us feel fuller longer. By limiting carbohydrate consumption and focusing on less refined carbohydrates, we allow
there's one refined one in particular.
Insulin levels to fall, which enables metabolic flexibility, allowing our bodies to access fat stores to provide the energy required to function. In addition to following these principles, our bodies need time to allow insulin levels to recede. Unicity recommends a form of intermittent fasting we refer to as 4-4-12. By waiting 4 to 6 hours between breakfast and lunch and dinner, and waiting 12 to 16 hours between dinner and breakfast with no snacking in between, we can give our bodies the time needed to get into what we call the fat-burning zone. The fat-burning zone, or FBZ, is the time when insulin is low and our bodies use stored fat, not glucose, as energy. People report a number of benefits from maximizing their time in the fat-burning zone, including reduced cravings for unhealthy foods, improved focus and concentration, more mental and physical energy, improved skin appearance, in addition to healthy weight and body composition.
Let me get this straight. So when people have not been eating for 4 hours, they have fewer cravings. Is that what she just said? What? I mean, that all sounds well and good on paper, but that's not as easy as you're making it out to be. Not when everyone's addicted to sugar.
Unicity has created several products that reinforce and support these principles, making it easier than ever to activate optimal health. So,
it's unbelievable that they're suggesting that you need anything from Unicity to make any of these desirable changes happen. Okay, all you need to do is alter your diet in the proper way, which is much easier said than done, but you certainly don't need any products from Unicity to do that. I don't think they're going to do anything for you.
Now you know. Our bodies are amazing and complex metabolic machines. And now that we are equipped with the right activating principles, we can be on our way to returning to a healthier, metabolically flexible state.
But you still can't get a face, I guess, unless you have a beard.
Hope you enjoyed that video. I just think it is spectacular.
You do?
It conveys all of these ideas in a lovely, accurate way.
Kind of playing it fast and loose with the word accurate there.
Now, let me introduce one new concept in this talk, and I hope that you're still taking notes. Stay off your phones. Pay attention. If the body has low insulin for a prolonged period of time, that means it's really burning high levels of fat.
Don't say ketosis. Don't you fucking dare.
You know that by now. Low insulin means high fat burning. Now, within the body, something very interesting starts to happen.
Don't.
When it's been burning a lot of fat for a long time.
Don't.
The body starts to make these small little things in the blood called ketones. And this is from all of the fat burning. So when the liver, in particular, is burning a lot of fat, it starts to turn some of this into these small little pieces of fat that we call ketones. Now, ketones, in and of themselves, are very beneficial molecules. When someone's eating a diet that follows those 3 nutritional principles, they can expect to have some ketones being produced. And ketones have been found to benefit numerous aspects of the body.
You did it. I'm going to put a card up for my Prove It video. Second of all, the ketogenic diet is nearly impossible for the average person to follow. And if you're not following a ketogenic diet, you are not getting the benefits of ketone bodies. You're just not. That's not how it works. You don't get it from having some of them or a few of them. You have to be in a state of ketosis for an extended period of time. And that requires an extremely low carbohydrate, almost no carbohydrates, very high fat, and the minimum amount of protein that you can possibly eat. Like, you want as little as you can while still getting all you need, and then very high fat and almost no carbohydrates. That is almost impossible for people to follow. That is the only way to get the benefits that are being said that ketosis has. You have to follow that diet or you can't get it.
We know from evidence from multiple published studies that ketones can help the brain, the heart, our muscles, our body fat, and even something called inflammation that you've all heard of. In the brain, there are studies in humans with Alzheimer's disease that when the brain is fed some ketones, the brain starts to work better. Immediate memory gets better. The brain starts to think more clearly.
It's not just some ketones. It has to be only ketones. This is the case for epilepsy as well. The ketogenic diet is very effective for epilepsy, but it is almost impossible to keep up with it. It is almost impossible to keep that diet up because it is extremely restrictive.
In the case of the heart, we know that when humans start to have heart failure, when the heart isn't beating as well, it will shift and start to use ketones more because ketones help the heart beat more blood every time it contracts.
Citation needed, because the heart always burns fat. The heart is one of the only tissues that preferentially burns fat over glucose.
So it helps the heart work more efficiently. Muscle also is benefited by ketones. My laboratory at my university published a paper just last year finding that ketones help the muscle work in a way that produces less oxidative stress.
You know what, though? You know what? I found that study, though. And here it says that none of the authors had any conflicts of interest. So how can you have no conflicts of interest yet be citing this exact paper on stage to sell products? You're on stage here giving a presentation on why they should sell more Unicity products and how to sell more of them. And pertinent to this pitch, you say, is the information you found in this paper in a presentation that you were paid to give. No conflicts of interest. How can you say that? Is this the Brigham Young way of doing things? Is this how you do things over there at BYU? No conflicts of interest, yet you're being paid to present this paper's findings at a conference that is put on to sell products? That's a conflict of interest, sir. I don't know what they're doing over there at BYU. That's pretty shady.
We're also just about to publish a paper that finds that ketones actually help our body fat have a higher metabolic rate. So did you know that
I found that paper too. What did you look here? The authors declare no conflict of interest. And yet, here you are presenting the results of this at a conference, and you're being paid for this presentation that supports the sales of this company's products. No conflicts of interest. Really? This is the BYU way of doing things, I guess.
fat tissue has its own metabolic rate, and ketones help it be about 3 times higher than normal. And then lastly, inflammation is...
That is such a stupid point, because if you are in ketosis, that means that you are burning fat. So is it that the ketones cause the fat cells to have a higher metabolic rate? Or is it that because the fat cells are having a higher metabolic rate, you're seeing ketones? Like, duh.
Is relevant to numerous chronic diseases, including insulin resistance and diabetes, and ketones help turn down the inflammation. So from top to bottom, ketones are known to help the body be a little better. Now, in the video, you were reminded of the 3 nutritional principles within Unicity. And this guides...
I just have to say what a piss poor explanation of ketosis that was. And if you want a better explanation, check the card for the Prove It video. Like, the entire way he presented that made it sound like you just need like a supplemental level of ketones or something. There was nothing in there about how you need to be running exclusively on fat metabolism and exclusively ketone bodies. Nothing in there about that. You would not have ever gotten any impression that you need to be on an extremely restrictive minimal protein, no carbohydrate, very high fat diet to get any of these benefits at all from ketone bodies.
Is the way we think about what we eat. And I hope you remember these. Prioritize protein, make sure you eat enough. Third or second, fuel.
If you are prioritizing protein, you will not ever experience any ketosis that produces any effects. You will not enter ketosis if you are prioritizing consuming protein. You won't.
With fat, help the body use fat for fuel by eating it. And then the other principle, control carbohydrates. This just means be smart about your choices of carbohydrate. Now, these three principles are very deliberate. We came up with these ideas because of what they each do to insulin. As I mentioned a moment ago, if you eat a pure carbohydrate source, insulin will spike up to 10 times and stay higher for up to maybe 4 hours, depending on the person. If you eat pure protein, then you'll get a modest insulin spike. It's small, usually. And then if you eat pure fat, well...
Usually? Now why, pray tell, is it only usually that you would get an insulin spike from pure protein? Is that because it can be converted into sugar?
There's no insulin response whatsoever. Now, let's look at how this matters in a day. Someone wakes up in the morning, and you'll see that we're going to look at someone's insulin levels over time. When we wake up in the morning, our insulin is low, but then we immediately eat a starchy, sugary, processed breakfast.
Maybe you do. Speak for yourself.
Cereal or toast or...
Don't eat breakfast cereal. Well, just choose a smart one, okay? A lot of breakfast cereals are over 50% sugar.
A bagel or a bowl of rice, and insulin climbs. And then it comes down, and right about when it's coming down, a few hours later, well, then it's time for lunch, and we eat a starchy or sugary lunch, a sandwich or yogurt, something with too much sugar in it, or starch, and we...
Starch is not the major issue here. It's just not. It categorically is not. We've had starches in our diets for thousands of years, okay? And only recently has diabetes just rocketed up in prevalence, okay? Like, come on, use your brain.
Bump insulin up again. And then right when insulin's coming back down, we bump it up again with a starchy or sugary dinner.
Once again, starch is not the problem.
Now, what happens, of course, when insulin is low is that the body has these brief moments of fat burning. Because remember, the body can only burn fat if insulin is low. And so we have these brief moments of fat burning. And you'll see that it's a little bigger in the morning. And of course, that's because insulin has had more time while we sleep to come down. And so we wake up in the morning and we're in a little higher fat burning than we will be for the rest of the day. Now, this is in a good situation. This is assuming that the person is waiting 4 hours between breakfast and lunch, 4 hours between lunch and dinner, and then waiting 12 to 16 hours between dinner and breakfast the next day. That's the good way to do it, to give your body periods of time in the day to burn fat. Now, let's mix things up a little bit. Rather than start the day with a high carbohydrate breakfast, what if someone instead were to focus on the two other macronutrients? Rather than eating a high carbohydrate, what if they were focusing more on fat and protein, the two macronutrients that have little or no effect on insulin? Well, that would mean the low insulin, when the person woke up, gets to stay low all morning. And that, of course, means that that little bit of fat burning that was happening in the morning, well, it's bigger than it was before.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how many fire units where the scale on here is, but the fact that it is flat, the insulin is flat when there's very clearly protein there, I can see it. I mean, are you going to be accurate or not? I'm not saying that it has a huge spike in insulin when you eat protein, like, because it doesn't. But you're being disingenuous here. You are, and you know what? He knows it.
We're giving the body more time to have low insulin, and of course, that means the fat-burning flame just gets a little bigger. Now, let's take it one step.
How can you say it's a little bigger when it took up literally the entire axis? Furthermore, do you see what I mean? He's getting so into the weeds and bogged down. Like, who can keep track of this on a day-to-day basis? Like, who can remember all of this and all these concepts? Like, it's confusing. He's very, like, fuzzy on a lot of the things. He's like, oh, well, if you get more time and you got to do 4, 4, 12 and blah, 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 blah. And so far, he has said the word sugar like twice.
Step further. What if, in addition to breakfast, we also swap out a lunch and we mix both breakfast and lunch to follow the 3 nutritional principles within
Well, you took away our breakfast protein.
Unicity science. Well, now in this case, when insulin was low in the morning when they woke up, insulin can stay low all day until maybe the carbohydrate heavy breakfast or dinner rather that we eat with our family or our friends. Of course, what that means is
all of this, sir, sounds a lot easier said than done, and it sounds really obvious. So maybe if it were this simple, people would have done it already.
All day from the moment we wake up, we're fanning the flames of fat burning. So that little bit of fat burning that's happening when we wake up, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Every hour of the day that we allow insulin to stay low, we keep turning on the fat burning. We let it just keep raging, which is a great way to help our body.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a gross exaggeration, sir. It's not raging.
Fat stay at a healthy level or get to a healthy level. Now, let's look at that last meal for just a second. This is how I live my life. As a father, husband, scientist, professor,
I don't care.
I do this every day. Dinner time is the most social meal for me because I sit with my family and I eat dinner with my wife and my beautiful children who are
I don't give a shit.
Sometimes very naughty, but they're always very cute. So we're eating our dinner, maybe more carbohydrate. Well, we look at that insulin bump, and can you think of a nice way to help that insulin bump be a little smaller?
I mean, why does your dinner have to have so many carbs?
Well, Unicity has some good ways with the BioSlice.
Oh, of course they do. Of course they do.
Life or the Bio7. If you precede the carbohydrate meal with the fiber,
if it's a fiber supplement, that means that it is soluble fiber, which means, number one, it's not as good as insoluble fiber. Second of all, fiber supplements are nowhere near, like you can't just take the fiber out of the food and still get the benefits from it. You can't. You just can't. Not nutritionally. You can't. I'm sorry.
well, then you take that big insulin curve, that insulin bump, and you just bring it down.
If you care that much, then you could just, there are so many high protein, low carb dinners. There are so many. I would think that was the easier meal to do a low carb on, because you can have a big portion of meat or vegetable protein.
You help that insulin spike be smaller than it would be otherwise. And so you just help the fat burning keep going. Now, in conclusion, as your temporary teacher and professor, I hope that you've learned a couple things. One, when you eat refined carbohydrates and sugar, your insulin levels will spike. That will mean the body must switch to sugar burning mode. That's the fuel you will use. Eat refined starches and sugars, you become a sugar burner because of insulin. In contrast, when you focus on fat as a fuel source in your diet, insulin comes down, and now you can start burning fat for fuel. And remember the key, the critical component in helping the body learn to burn fat for fuel and glucose or sugar for fuel is what insulin is doing. High insulin means sugar burning. High fat, or a low insulin rather, means fat burning. I hope you've been able to learn something useful on metabolic fuel and how to be the healthiest you can. Thank you so much for listening.
That was so stupid. No, all I learned is that it is not a conflict of interest to use a paper that you published as evidence for why it is good to sell a company's products that you are being paid to give a presentation for. That's not a conflict of interest, at least I guess it isn't at BYU. And I learned that you repeat yourself an awful lot. And somehow I just felt that was, I just thought it was incredible that his solution for that dinner was a Unicity product with a little bit of fiber in it. Are you kidding me? This is the kind of like into the weeds stuff that is very beneficial to the food industry merchants of doubt. Okay. You know, it's in the same little basket as that a calorie is a calorie, or that, well, sugar is bad because it's empty calories. Like, no, that is like the least bad thing about sugar. Okay. There's also the fact that it's essentially a toxin. Okay. But that's going to be in the next video. So be on the lookout for that. Unicity, you're terrible. You need to disclose your conflicts of interest, sir, because this is ridiculous. Unfortunately, it's basically par for the course for nutrition studies, although they do usually disclose it at least. Okay, Coca-Cola at least says they sponsored it. I've been Mac. Peace out. Bye.